It's been more than 3 months by now with the release of the MASQUE unit through DBT12, and let's be real guys, MASQUE unit has been quite a mid mechanic compared to its predecessor Reverse.
Emotional damage!
Where it still sees some proper success in some of the reverse unit, whereas for MASQUE you barely see it at all. But I do think DBT12 will change things up a little bit because I do think there are some of the MASQUE unit in the DBT12 that are considered to be pretty damn solid. And if you guys are wondering what about the other 5 that came before this unit, I have already made a video of talking about it, so you guys can check it out, as this is a 4th part of the MASQUE series I'm currently working on. So if you guys enjoy this kind of content, consider clap that subscribe button as it will help me tremendously. And without further ado, let's start off chronologically with Office MASQUE. Cardinal Moss Office MASQUE is a very interesting MASQUE unit as it is controversially bad and it is good.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
It has 3 abilities, one of which is your typical mass restriction, and then act Vanguard once per turn, remove a card with or fit with different name from this card from hand, soul or drop, choose a world card from your drop and put it into order zone, and then the last ability, auto Vanguard when this is attack, counterblast 1, put any number of world card from order zone into drop, and call up to the same number of Shadow Army token as the number of world cards put into drop for this card to rare card with units on it. If you call 2 or more cards, this unit gets additional drive until the end of that battle. Credits due to where it's due, Office MASQUE's best skill lies into its 2nd skill due to its Act skill in nature. This means that you can prioritize cards like Polaris Dragon, Grander, or Opass to do the setup on your board first before using this particular skill to supplement for a much better battle phase board that Office normally wanted it for. And its attack skill is far from being bad actually, because its additional drive is a good way to get additional hand size compared to its other counterpart, and most of the time by now you are calling a Shadow Army token over a unit already, so this is more or less just an extension of that in the ruling form. But unfortunately, this particular ruling is also one of its biggest downfall due to the fact that this card does sacrifice a lot of cards in the order to get the biggest advantage that you can get within a short period of time. You see, the fact that you have to drop your order card from your order zone to just get 1 army token is actually quite an expensive cost to do so, due to the fact that you are restricted to set 1 order once per turn. Sure, you have cards like Polaris and Office MASQUE to recover all those cards, but the fact that if you are low rolling these cards, this means that Office MASQUE can have some of the scariest finisher move or the weakest finisher move I have seen among the MASQUE units. Yes, even weaker than Drudgeable. And yes, the extra drive is nice and all, but the fact that you traded it for additional power that Regis had is a little bit iffy and can be argued that it is both bad and worse, depend on whether you are lucky or not. So overall, I would have to say Office is a pretty mid unit, and rather than an upgrade to the Office deck like a lot of people say it will be, it's more of like an alternative way to play your Office Regis. And here is my deck list. With Office MASQUE's biggest issue being recovering the order because you are gonna be sacrificing a lot of them in 1 turn, my deck list revolves around doing the opposite, so helping you to set up early using cards like Grander and Opass, mulling those world orders directly into your drop zone, and just recover them back as much as possible using cards like Grander to add it back to hand, and then Regis, Office MASQUE and Polaris to just set them directly into the set order zone. Of course, I also choose to run Combine Ratchet as a part of the right line, as I do feel that having this card in your drop zone is a nice backup provided you're up against a deck that does retire, such as Gandiva. Of course, for trigger lineup, I have to go for crit and draw lineup here. This is purely due to the fact that Office already hit very hard, so the only thing that it kind of needs with those Shadow Army token is pressure, and I do think critical is one of the easiest way the deck can go for. Moving on to the next entry in this list of new MASQUE unit, we have a unit that in my opinion has a very different design principle compared to his predecessors, as well as the MASQUE unit that was released within the same booster that he was introduced in, and that is of course Evil Eye Dragon Emperor Omina Grigio MASQUE. Just like any other Dark State MASQUE unit we have seen so far, this card also have 3 skills, one of which is a restriction and one of which is a removal skill to essentially activate some strong effects, and for this case is choose up to 1 trigger unit from your drop, bind it, and this unit get constant on Vanguard Vanguard. All of your opponent cards with the same trigger icon as any card in your bind zone gets shield minus 5k, and your opponent cannot increase the power with those trigger effects until the end of turn. And then he also have a really busted effect where once per turn at the end of the battle this unit attack, you can counter blast 1, put 2 of your back row rear guard into soul, restand this unit, and this unit get drive minus 1 until the end of turn. Obina Mask is a very interesting specimen compared to his peer of the same archetype, and this is mainly due to the fact that not only he has a really strong effect as a deck to begin with, his deck seems to revolve around him in particular. Like the other Mask deck seems to focus on the original version of the boss unit, but this one seems to be designed specifically to support Mask as an archetype. I mean, Halona did mention it in the anime, doesn't it? But regardless, UI Beast's main mechanic is a trigger negation, which is a really powerful effect to begin with, but on top of that, they decided to give a shield minus value and a restand on the Mask version. That is what I would have to call an overkill. Like, it is really busted and it works really well into the nation as a whole. And on top of that, the fact that you have to put 2 rear guard from your back row into soul to activate his restand effect means that he can take advantage of the unit like Goman to make a guard restrict turn possible. But that doesn't mean that he is completely invincible. He does have a weakest power when it comes to restanding a Vanguard, and also you are forcing to run Rainbow Trigger in his deck to get the full effect of his support such as Misery Wing, which helps you to get additional draw, and he can hit really hard on his own, and the Gear Colossus, I forget the full name, that does increase the shield value based on the different type of trigger you have in your bind zone. Moving on to the deck list for Obina Grigio Mask, there is more or less very standard practice I decided to do with the deck list, but at the same time there are a few take choice I run that does make you think a little bit about how you play the game. So of course I run 4 of everything that related to Obina Grigio, with the exception of Rune Collector and the Mask of Hierangram. One because of the price, the other is because I feel you don't really need to use this effect as much due to the fact that you can just use Goman as a primary target to give the whole field a guard restrict. And there is also Spada, which help you to buy trigger from soul, allowing me to bind up to 3 triggers into the bind zone on the first turn, allowing me to more or less restrict the opponent in a much faster pace. And my last option with Amethyst is kind of like a tech slot. I found Amethyst being useful with a higher shield value, but I would say the Colossus, the grade 2 that they give in the booster, does work as well. Moving on, next we have a Mask unit that I personally like it a lot due to its heavy synergy with the Mask as a whole mechanic, not just the Mask of Hierangram. Silver Hornbeast King of Calamity Magnolia Mask.
Let's go!
Aside from this unit having restriction just like any other Mask unit, it also have constant Vanguard. During your turn, all of your rear guard on rear guard circle with a Dragon Tree marker can attack from back row and gets additional 10k. And act once per turn cost, remove a non-Mask Magnolia from hand, soul, or drop. This unit get on Vanguard. When your rear guard attacks a Vanguard from the back row, choose one of your opponent rear guard and retire it until the end of turn. The most interesting aspect about Magnolia Mask, and to an extension, the best part of it, is the fact that it does utilize Dragon Tree marker, a mechanic that not a lot of Mask deck actually use, and it's actually utilized it extremely well, as Magnolia Mask actually use it as a mean to gain additional attack and also additional power, making it not heavily relying on Persona Ride. Though if you manage to Persona Ride, you still have cards like Zero to help you to take advantage of it further, on top of searching for additional Magnolia from deck to your hand. And its retiring skill is pretty alright, I guess. It is a very optional skill, so this means that the need of running multiple non-Mask Magnolia in your deck actually reduced for this particular build. But this deck still has its own issue, and that boils down to the fact that it is still require a lot of commitment, and if you cannot generate those markers at all, you are easily held back, and of course you need 3 counter blasts for it. But as I said earlier, all the effort that you are putting in for this combo is actually well worth it, especially we have cards like Forest Force Dragon to essentially populate your back row back to the full field. And here is my deck list for Magnolia Mask. Dragon Tree marker are the vein and blood of Magnolia Mask, so I'm running 3 of each of the Mask engine. Is quite crucial because it just helps you to loop into it consistently. On the other hand, I do run cards that does help to regenerate the field like Force Scroll Dragon, and essentially help you to recover the resource like Gogot and Alpine to essentially help me to set up the board in a much better way. A little bit unfortunate for this deck is the fact that you can't really run Kinosula, which was the one of the base card in Magnolia deck, but But the more I have tested this deck, the more the deck doesn't really need it anymore.
Emotional damage.
Last and definitely the least useful mask that I have seen currently is called DBT12 MASQUE.
What the fuck?
Aside from the restriction effect that it has normally, it also had act once per turn, remove a non-masked Noiselinker from hand, soul or drop zone, choose up to 3 meteorite cards from your drop zone and put them into your hand. And then auto on Vanguard circle, when this unit attack a Vanguard, counterblast one and put any number of meteorite cards from your order zone into drop zone, and for every 2 meteorite card put into drop for this cost, choose up to 1 unit card from your hand, call it to Vanguard circle. If 4 or more meteorite cards were put into drop for this card, your trigger effect activates twice until the end of battle. At a glance, you can see that the card is not that bad. Technically, you get +3 back from drop zone to hand, allowing you to set up a little bit easier, and the unit sacrifice critical and power for additional 2 attacks, which in certain situations is alright. But the biggest problem with this card is the fact that it belongs in a meteorite archetype, a deck that already running a lot of bricks of a set order the deck work to begin with, and with the mask engine, which is extremely bricky to play, this makes this particular unit an extreme brick galore. In all fairness, you technically can find a few ways to actually make it work, and they did actually release a great one that allow you to help the setup board to be a little bit easier to pull off. But the problem is the fact that more than 1/3 of your deck size will consist of an order card, so that means that you barely can call anything to the field at all. And there is also the problem of needing a mass order to be in hand. There is a few of these mass right line already with the playstyle that kind of force you to run only mass order in the deck. This is just like one of them. But the problem with this card is the fact that if you cannot pull off the mass combo, the deck became completely unplayable. Because Gravidia as a deck already demands so much attention from your field, the fact that now you have 2 jobs to actually balance it out makes it really hard to actually play the deck properly. And here is my deck list, and full disclaimer here, this is far from being a good deck list because I have tried so many different combos, but focusing on Noiselinker superior core effects just not gonna work with this deck. So I decided to play around with the mechanic and allow you to loop the effect a little bit easier using the cards like Hadris or Grui and Bizarre Visitor to essentially allow you to set additional order into the order zone while still gaining some counter charge action and soul blast that the deck do need. I still decided to run Combined Rusher here purely because of the fact that occasionally if you decided to play the order from hand, you can call this card back and use this as a beater.
Synergy.
And we have come to the end of part 4 of my Mars series. And personally for me, I think this group of Mars unit from DBT12 is actually the best group by far in terms of quality, with the exception of one very black sheep. But what do you guys think? Do leave down in the comments whether is there gonna be a part 5 to this series, because right now we do not know will there be more Mars unit in the series or not, especially for Dragon Empire and Keter Sanctuary. But yeah, do leave down in the comments below. And that's all I have for today, guys. Take care of yourself, and this is McMegane signing out.